Hello again, everyone. Varel here, Flo out of Portland. Welcome to our mini frequently asked questions series. Question number 7. Why is gutter performance critical to roof longevity? Gutter maintenance is critical to roof longevity in the event of an ice dam, independently of acts of God like freezing rain, ice related incidences, or regional freezing like the high desert of Eastern Oregon or Washington. Then you would be okay to keep your gutters clean. That doesn't mean you're scot-free, but you're in a better situation. Some of those regions don't even require gutters at the eaves, but that being said, gutter maintenance is critical for roof longevity because that ice dam could climb back up the roof if you don't have proper ice and water detail at the eaves. What can happen is it will freeze up the roof, melt inside after it goes underneath the shingles, and you'll have a leak at your soffits or inside your walls. Not exactly ideal. So depends on the region, but roof longevity is tied to gutter maintenance, not necessarily exactly gutter performance. I guess you could stretch that to be if you didn't have a proper gutter installation where the slope was not done properly, then in that case, you could potentially have a freezing incident. And this is extreme. Let's say it's not sloped at all, right? And it goes the opposite direction of your downspout. And in the event that it's not a fascia gutter on a newer build, that could tear off your fascia board, could damage or split your rafter tails. It could damage your flashings, right? And this is an extreme example where that would rip off the building. Maybe you've neglected the maintenance and it's not sloped correctly. Double whammy. Then you'd be in that potential zone of roof damage, but the roof longevity is fairly independent of gutter performance. Gutter maintenance is a different story. And then that is for the standard K-style fascia mount where you don't have what's called a back bend or this drip transition on the back side of the gutter. Some of the newer builds in construction are surprisingly not as well built as they used to be, right? At the eave transition, developers, builders love this 3-in-1 gutter. And at the rafters, you may not have any fascia board, and you'll notice your gutter is acting as the fascia board. And if you were to peek under the shingles, it has a built-in drip bend to act as a drip metal to help save on materials there. And it's also the gutter. And that gutter typically has on the fascias a fairly small trough. And you'll notice even further downstream of the gutter that the downspouts are relatively small. And in these new developments, they try to control tree cover, landscaping, etc., so that you can try to reduce maintenance. There is an intention around that, but developers don't care. You, the homeowner, is going to be left with building maintenance. And if you want the best ROI on gutter performance, at least at the level where you're having that fascia gutter that the developer's using, very, very often, because it's affordable again, and we all know these developers are pumping out the highest quality houses these days, that they're going to use steel, and there's going to be a life expectancy or a life expiration on those gutters. And so you can go across Northwest Portland to some of these late 90s, early 2000s developments, and you'll see rusty gutters everywhere, right? And if you don't stay on top of your maintenance, the point of what I'm trying to drive in on the fascia gutters is a little more subtle, that the fascia gutters at the developer level that utilize the steel, that have the back bend, they follow the eave because they sit on the plywood, which means they are not sloped whatsoever. And a little educational tip to anyone that has these old school fascia gutters is that they're gravity fed, assuming that the house is actually built level. And you will have potentially settling over those 2 or 3 decades on these newer builds, which can result in a negative slope. So then you have water sitting opposite of the downspout. And if you're not maintaining things properly, then water's just sitting in a steel gutter longer, which means it's going to oxidize faster, unfortunately. And so that can result in staining of the products on the first story if you have drainage going down from the second story. And at that point, you could have a brand new roof if you're not addressing the gutters at the same time. The staining could result in an aesthetic that looks like you have an old roof on your brand new roof. So you might as well look at doing them at the same time. Can you do gutters independently of the roof? Of course. They're two separate pieces, and it happens all the time. People request gutters before or after. It's always strongly recommended to do your gutters after the roof. We even say, if you're going to paint anytime soon, do the gutters after the paint, right? Unless you don't have, if you're going to go purple, or orange, really those gutter colors are going to fairly match the tones of the trim and the different accents that you're trying to achieve. So gutter performance regarding gutter maintenance and workmanship can affect roof longevity in specific climates. But here we're pretty mild here in the Pacific Northwest. We don't have a lot of those issues. Really exciting answer, I know. Riveting. On to the next one.